So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the numbers. Even though we don't have our driver in the car, we want to show how to make some simple, easy adjustments to get you on the numbers that you're trying to hit based on what your manufacturer, what we've shown you on the guide for setting up your car is going to be. So if we look at the setup on the numbers right now, what I would look at here is let's look at cross 61.62%. Okay, that's actually not too far off for being in the range of what we like to run or maybe where we would start. But just for what we're doing here today, what we're going to do is we're not going to pay attention to the rear and the left right now, even though we will show you how to make those adjustments. The cross that I'm talking about right now is 61.62%. So let's say that I want to decrease the cross in this car. Let's go look at how I would go about decreasing the cross in the car. Then we'll come back here and see how it actually affected the numbers on the scales. I said I wanted to decrease cross. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off. The easiest way is, without taking the lugs off, is to pull off the wheel spacers and the castle nut. Then I could just pull the entire hub. Watch the, if you're going to do it this way, watch the bearings don't pop out. I like to pull those off, set those in the wheel, set it over here so it's out of the way. So we have the wheel off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust cross. And you can see more of this in the front end videos of how the L block cross, all of that works. But what we're going to do, as I said when we were looking at the interface over there for the scales, is we want to decrease cross. And so typically what you want to do when you're making a cross adjustment, if at all possible, you want to make the adjustment on both sides. And so what do I mean when I say that? What I mean is, if I'm going to decrease cross, I need to have the right side spindle go up, okay? Which means I need to have the left side spindle go down. And so what I would typically do is I would take a half washer out of here, off of the top, and put it on the bottom so the spindle goes up. I would go to the left side and I would pull a half washer off of the bottom and put it on the top so the spindle goes down. So what I'm going to do to increase cross is I'm going to work on the right side in this case, just to show you how it's done. And the first thing that I have to do is I have to take out the little lock pin. I have to pop off the castle nut that's on top of the kingpin itself. And once I pop this off of here, now this kingpin can slide out. Okay, now obviously when I pull this out of here, all this is going to want to fall apart. So I want to try to do this the best way that I can without everything falling apart. And really my goal here is to take, I'm going to, so we can see how it moves on the scales. I'm going to take the washers that are up here, the small washers. There's a thick one up here as well. I'm going to take the small washers and let's count. This is what I often like to do, is count the washers that I have on here. So on the bottom of this one, I have a large washer and I have 3 full washers. On the top, I have a large washer, I have a half washer, and I have a full washer. I'm going to plan to take the half washer and full washer and put it to the bottom to reduce cross and move the spindle up. So let's push this out of here, see how much of a mess I can make. Pull the kingpin down and out of here. Get my washers out of here. So now, on the right hand, I have what was on the bottom. On the left hand, I have what was on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 washers, like I said. This is the half washer, which is a 32nd. This is a full washer, which is a 16th. I'm going to take both of those and I'm going to put them on the bottom as well with the thick washer. And I like to take and put the half washers together and put the full washer together as well. So this is what's going to be on the bottom of the spindle now. On the top of the spindle, we're only going to have the one big washer. So the way that I like to go about this is I take my kingpin, I start it in the bottom of the L block, like this. I set the washers on there. So now I have all the bottom washers on. Put my thumb on it, put the spindle back in there, push the kingpin back up and through. Now it's started to crest at the top of the spindle. I'm going to pull it back down so it's flush. I'm gonna get the big washer in here. Push it, wiggle it, smush it back up on the top. Grab my castle nut. And one thing that I do want to check is, you notice this heim right here? It's a little bit twisted. When we go and look at camber again, that's something we're going to want to watch. We want to make sure that this heim is perfectly perpendicular to the kingpin. Right now it's a little bit cocked, which isn't going to give me a full range of motion on that heim. So I'm going to want to adjust that. So you notice how that's cocked? Let's make sure we get that perpendicular when we make our adjustment and check camber next. So I'm going to go up in here, and like I've said in other videos, you don't want to make this farmer tight, okay? That is not how tight. We do not want to crank this down on here, all right? We want to make it just snug enough that we can get our safety pin right there, just snug enough that I can see the hole for the safety pin and get it through the top of the kingpin. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to put the tire back on. We're going to set it back down on the scales, and we're going to go look at the actual interface and see how the cross was adjusted. So what I was talking about with this castle nut being tight, one of the things you want to look out for is, you hear that? That is slop, all right? We do not want that slop to be there. We want to tighten this down just enough that we remove the slop. So what I'm going to do first, though, is I'm going to make a slight adjustment to this heim here so that it's perpendicular. Now it's perpendicular. That's how it should be. I'm going to snug it down where it needs to be, just like that. Perfect. Then what I want to do is, see the slop? I'm going to snug this down just enough that it removes the slop. Doesn't take much. I only moved it probably, see slop? I probably moved it 2 flats. 2 flats, slop is gone. Now that the slop is gone, I can put the pin back in, lock it down, good to go, slop. Okay, so we've made the cross adjustment. We've decreased cross, and we did it just on the right side to show it on the scales. We didn't do it on the left side, even though that's typically what you'd want to do, is match pair on both sides so you can get your cross adjustment. When we look at the cross now, where we started was about 61.2%. Now we're at 58.95%. We don't have a driver or anything in here. And so what this really means is that a half washer will move you about 0.75%, and a full washer will move you about 1.5%. So you can see we've decreased cross about 2.25% right here by moving that spindle up on just the right side. So something very important to do, we made a cross adjustment. And this is going to be the same for any front end adjustments that you make to this car. Any front end adjustments that you make, especially when it comes to changing the cross of the car, changing the caster, any of those things, you're going to then need to go back and tow the car and check the camber again. Once again, we lowered the cross in this car by raising the right side spindle. So what we've done is we've put the tools back on the car to check the camber and the toe. If I look at the camber now, the camber has changed from my original setting. I wanted 3.5. I had 3.5 before I changed the cross. Now I actually have less than 3.5. It moved by half a bubble. I'm going to have to make the camber adjustment now that I have the cross where I want it so that the camber's right. I also need to make the toe adjustment. What did I want? I wanted a 16th toed out. Now that I made the cross adjustment, it has changed my toe by about, I don't know, I'd say a 32nd. I now need to go back in and readjust the toe on this car again. You need to do this every time you make an adjustment to the front end of the car. If you've already set toe and camber, like you should before you make your cross adjustments, after the cross adjustment, come back, check camber, check toe again, fine tune it back where it needs to be. Then you'll be good to go, ready to go on the racetrack. So we made a cross adjustment by raising the right side spindle to lower the cross. As I've said multiple times, typically want to make the adjustment on both sides. So if you're going to make a cross adjustment to up the cross, you're going to want to make a half washer, full washer adjustment on both sides to even out the front end. It's the best way to go about it. Left side weight. Let's talk about left side weight. Depending on the car that you have, the numbers you're trying to hit, you may not be able to get there with just adjustments to the car mechanics and dynamics of the car. You may need some lead weight. But some things that you want to check first before you go messing around with the lead. One, you want to check the seat placement. You want to make sure that the seat is actually in the cradle as far left as you can get it. So you want to check that and make sure. If it isn't, you can unbolt the seat, drill new holes, and move the seat over. That's one way to help get more left side weight. Another thing that we like to look at as well on our car, you'll notice that we have an engine slider, which makes so you don't have to crawl underneath of this car. The slider actually allows you to adjust gears and all that. We've gone over that in other videos. But the cool thing about this as well is if you need left side weight, you do want to make sure that this engine slider is all the way to the left as far as you can get it, because it's going to bring that engine weight over to the left further. So that's something you want to look at. You obviously want to look at clearance and where the pipe is and where the clutch lands, but this is another way to improve the left side weight of this car. Then, if it comes down to it and you just can't get the left side weight in the car, what you're going to want to do is add a 5-pound weight, 10-pound, however much you need to get where you need to go. And so if we look over here at the scales themselves right now, you'll notice that we have left side weight at 55.81. Well, let's just see what happens when I add 5 pounds of weight to the left side of this car. So I've added 5 pounds of weight to the left side of the seat. Notice the left side weight is at 56.74. You can see it's made a significant difference in the left side weight of this car and probably got us a lot closer to where we want to be. So you can see that subtle adjustments are going to do big things to this car. Now, another thing I want to briefly talk about are the setup sheets. When you are getting your car scaled, when you get the car where you want it to be, make sure that you are taking pictures of this. That's one way to do it, but also documenting the date, the time, the car, the driver, all of the information on that car, from the PSI of the tires to the stagger, everything. So you can keep these recorded every time you scale the car. Every time you come off the racetrack and you guys go home for the night, scale that car and see where you ended up on so you can compare it to the numbers you started with. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to improve the setup of the car and how it handles for your driver. So now let's take a look at where I put that lead weight. Typically what you want to do is you want to avoid mounting weights to the chassis. It's going to influence flex. You don't really want to mount it to the cradle. What you typically want to do is mount it to the seat, and you want to mount it as low as possible. You want to keep that weight as low on the center of gravity as possible. You can even mount it to the back of the seat as well. Just make sure that you're mounting it down low and that you're getting your numbers where you want them.